Round two.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bed Tech Show, where your hosts, Ben and Ethan, are going to be discussing some awesome tech news here at bedtime. We've got a lot of great stories for you. So, with that, we'll go ahead and get in. WWDC was this week, and Apple announced quite a few new things, new software, and new products. One of their new products is the Apple Vision Pro, and that is starting at a whopping $3,500. Rumor was that Mark Zuckerberg was a little apprehensive or maybe a little worried about what Apple would have been bringing to the table during this WWDC event. But according to a new memo from the CEO, it looks like Mark Zuckerberg wasn't wasn't too isn't too worried about Apple's Vision Pro and what it has to offer. It looks like, I mean, with what Meta is already currently offering, they have the Quest 3 headset, which is significantly cheaper at $500. And the Vision Pro is going to be at that 3,500 price point. Um, he said that it really showcases the difference in values, the vision of the companies bring in the way. And it looks like the Quest is about people interacting in new ways and feeling closer, while also about being active and doing things. By contrast, the demo at WWDC showed, you know, with their Vision Pro, showed people kind of more in a sedentary thing and using the device for professional purposes. Has a lot of great features to it. However, that price tag may be a barrier of entry for a lot of people and may have an impact on sales or the adoption of this. So I kind of wanted to get your opinion on it. What do you think? Do you think Apple's new product here is going to push forward virtual or augmented reality further, or is it just kind of another gimmick and just doing the same things that these other players that are already in the game are doing?
Good question. I do think it will push AR and VR further, but I don't think it will sell as much as Apple wants it to. Mainly because the price point's very high, and I have heard some mediocre things about it, that it's not as capable as what the price point should be. It doesn't have the same graphics and other aspects of what like a regular computer would be. And personally, I don't like the culture of what they were pushing in their ad. So it's very similar to what Mark Zuckerberg was saying. I don't really like the culture of any VR because you become isolated, in my opinion, even if you haven't like what you're looking at projected on a screen for your friends or family to see. But like a very bad moment of Apple Vision Pro's marketing ad was a dad wearing the goggles, like recording his kids. But
Yeah.
I could easily, to me, that like you're behind a screen, man. Like,
Mhm.
in my opinion, you're still disconnected from your kids to a certain extent. You're not all the
Yeah.
way there. And if I was a kid and I was seeing like my dad or my mom have like these goggles on where I can't see their eyes, be like, what are you doing? Like, are you with me? Like, are you paying attention here? And they're like, yeah, I'm paying attention, but they have like a black goggle over their face. I'm like, I don't really know if you actually
It,
are or not.
yeah.
So anything Apple does is usually very user friendly and very smooth, um and makes the user experience very enjoyable. And so for
Mhm.
that reason, I do believe it's going to push AR and VR. but I think this is a glorified glorified Microsoft HoloLens, and I think there's a lot of cool features with it, but it's not as social as what Mark Zuckerberg was saying, and it doesn't live up to what the price point is. And so for that reason, I don't think they're going to sell as many. I could be wrong, but I know I'm not going to be buying it, at least not at first, because maybe there's a lot more to it that I don't know yet until I try it. But I'm not pre-ordering this or buying this.
Yeah. It's a
No
first
way.
gen product. Those are
Yeah,
always
exactly. Another
they're
reason,
always a little
first gen.
sketchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts. I don't know. Do you think I'll flip the question to you. Do you think that this is going to push AR, VR? Do you think people are going to buy it? Do you think it's worth the price? What are your thoughts around all that?
Price point, I I would say that the technology there is it was very high end. Um, I would say it may potentially warrant the price point. There's a lot of things that I don't like about it. I don't love that you have to be tethered to a battery.
Yeah.
That that I think that's really
Everyone they all had like the wire going behind
yeah,
them.
that's ridiculous. And especially the battery life on it's only 2 hours. You can't even get through a full movie on that.
Yeah, that's that's a really good point.
I mean, like if I really wanted to get this, I would be watching some of my favorite movies. You know, like this would potentially, um, I guess, rather than buying a TV, you could buy this, and that would be your home theater experience, allegedly.
Yeah, but
Um,
for 2 hours.
yeah, for 2 hours, and then so you get like partially through the movie, like,
Yeah.
and
They
then
advertise like they advertise like a plane ride. Like use it on the plane. It's like most plane rides are like 2 hours plus.
right, exactly. So it's yeah, some of the marks were missed. I think like the overall build quality and the machining of how it looked looks very premium. I do like that. However, all of the features that are on this device, I feel don't bring anything new to the VR or AR space. I mean, to some extent,
Yeah.
um, Meta and all the other competitors out there that have these AR VR goggles have these same features, albeit not as fluid or not as not as nice as Apple has. I think Apple has done a good job of trying to refine these types of features and make it a
Sure.
little bit better. And as you said, make it user friendly. I think it is going to be very user friendly. But they didn't bring anything new to the space.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And so I think because they didn't bring anything new, it's I think the product's going to suffer a little bit. Um, I mean, there is going to be a lot of people that are going to buy this. I'm sure it's going to sell pretty well. Um, I think that price point is still a pretty high barrier, especially like when people were complaining about the MetaQuest Pro and how that price tag was so outrageous. Comparatively now, the MetaQuest Pro seems like a great deal if you're
Yeah.
comparing it to this.
Yeah. 3,500 is so much money.
Yeah. And so, for that reason, I don't think I'm going to buy this either. I'm definitely going to watch the reviews on it and see what people's first impressions are of it. But I don't think it'd be something that I would get into. If anything, like because of this, I'm more inclined to invest in like the MetaQuest or the MetaQuest Pro just to kind of get into that space myself if I wanted to. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess this is good for Apple's competitors because now I'm like, okay, maybe I should get into this space now. But
Yeah. That's fair. That's really fair. I struggle even just paying multiple $100s for something in the VR space because I just don't know why or when I would use it.
yeah,
And
I agree. Like if I was single, it would be pretty easy to get into that.
100%.
But having a
Yeah.
family that, there's other priorities in life.
Yeah, definitely. And any free time I have, like I don't want to. I mean, I shouldn't necessarily say this is the only reason for it, but I don't want to waste my time doing something on my own, like secluded in goggles.
Right.
You know, I think in my free time, like I either want to be doing something that's active or social,
Hmm.
and I don't really feel like I'm getting that with these goggles, let alone any real VR.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some VR like the Quest, like you play video games and stuff, but again, even then, like I have a hard time paying multiple hundreds of dollars just to play video games when I can buy a console for $250.
Yeah. And
So
have essentially just as good of an experience. Maybe not same experience, but still have a great experience, looking at a
yeah,
TV
like
and using a controller.
equivalency of like serotonin and satisfaction.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. I mean, having VR is not going to make me play Call of Duty any better.
yeah. If anything, it'll be worse.
I know.
Ah!
I know.
I need all the aim assists I can get,
I
man.
know exactly. Need that controller.
That's right. That's right.
So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see it whether this Vision Pro turns out to be just like the HomePod, that was um, high price point and still a flop. So I think Apple will really need to bring something more to this space in order for this product to be successful.
Yeah. I think this is the classic. This is a classic Apple move without Steve Jobs.
Yes,
Mediocre product that's Apple branded at a very high price point.
I agree.
Like we've talked about this so many times. Apple just does not have a lot of innovation.
Yeah.
They're late to the VR game. They're not bringing anything new with the delay, and their price point is triple plus what
Hmm.
their competitors are,
Yeah.
and that's disappointing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's it even kind of shows with how they've treated their new Mac Pro that they also announced during
Yeah,
WWDC.
is it the
Um,
M2?
yeah, I mean, it's got a great system on a chip. Great that you can put that in there. However, the whole point of the Mac Pro was to be able to have a modular system that you could swap components and continue to upgrade during the life cycle of the product. And with this, like once you pick your amount of memory for your GPU, that's it. You can't get any more. They have PCIe slots, but you can't add a GPU because all GPUs are Intel based um, or AMD based. And then so that leaves you with sound cards. Ooh, I mean, that'll be good
Yeah,
for people in the music space, but um, still, like your expandability for that thing is not there. I mean, I think the M1 and M2 chips have been great innovations for Apple,
mm-hmm.
but I think the application in the Mac Pro it doesn't really fit.
It's a very valid point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's a really good point. It's a hindrance, but they have such loyal customers that they can get away with it.
Yeah, and they probably will and continue to sell.
Yep.
Something that is pretty cool, though, that they announced during their keynote is Apple is going to enable Windows games on the
Yay.
Mac. This is something that I thought was really interesting. So Apple was kind of during their keynote was really pushing for developers to port their games to Mac, going as far back and announcing some older games during their keynote. Um, but they did show off this game porting toolkit, and they detailed the process for developers wanting to port their games. breaking down into these 3 steps here. And this is, something that has really been a hindrance for Apple here in the last several years. You know, most of the PC games and Windows games use DirectX 12, which has been um, one of the major hurdles for getting Windows games to work on Mac. And now it looks like Apple finally has some sort of solution to allow DirectX 12 to interface with Mac OS, and it will have essentially like a built-in emulation layer that can take almost any Windows game and make it functioning on Macs. Keyword being functioning, not necessarily playable. So, you know, I wanted to get your take. Do you think that this move by Apple is a good idea, or do you think that they're too late to the game? And even with this, I guess, sanctioning by Apple to port games, do you think developers are even going to take the time to port their games onto the Mac OS system?
Yeah, I do. I actually do. I don't think it's too late for them. Um, I do think that people are going to want to play on Apple and their MacBooks. And I do think they're going to port games. And I say that because I think people see there is value with some of the MacBooks and the MacBook Pros. I know we were just talking about how been some disappointment there, but there is still value there with these type of laptops, and a lot of people still buy them, and they have PCs that they play games on. So I can definitely see people wanting to combine their passions, their creative passions on the Mac, and then their video game and social and enjoyment passions on their PC. Now they can play on one. Granted, you could do that on PC as well, but people people love Apple for many reasons. So I don't think Apple's late to the game on this. I think this is actually a really smart move from Apple to do this. Um, I think that was one of the competitive edges that PC used to have with Apple was like a play like Steam games and any kind of game I want
Mhm.
on PC. Um, and now that's not really an issue. It just allows Apple to be a little bit more flexible and open up um, some availability and uh, become a little bit more present in the market. So I don't think this is a bad move. I think this is actually really smart. Do you think it is? Do you think it's a bad move?
Ooh, you made some really good points. I think Apple's a little late to the game. I think it's a great move for Apple to do this and to, allow their products to be used in another market category that haven't been used for many years.
Yep.
But I think because so long that Apple um, kind of didn't care about games or didn't care to make it easy enough for developers to do this, that developers have kind of gotten into the mode of, well, we don't need to port it to, we don't need to put it on the Mac OS system, and um, why spend the extra time to do something like that? Um,
Hmm. Interesting.
So, I mean, it'll be really interesting to see if AAA games will move into this space and
Yep.
take the time to do that. I think if you can get AAA games to do that, then the rest will follow, and there will be a good market share for games to go to the Mac. However, if you don't get that buy-in from any of these really high-end games that um, a lot of people play, it might be a little hard, and it may end up being a gimmick.
That's fair. That's fair. It's interesting that you and I have different perspectives on how we think the market's going to react to this.
Hmm.
You have the idea, your thought and opinion, if I'm understanding correctly, is people have kind of moved on and said we don't need Apple anymore. Like since we haven't been able to port games and play on Apple products, We found alternatives and we're fine with it. And my thoughts and opinion are like, I think that I think it's that people will react positively and say, "Oh no, this is an opportunity for me to combine into one system or one ecosystem."
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens,
Yeah. Yeah.
like how people will really react. But I think you're right. I think if AAA games do port over, then it'll get people playing and on MacBooks and Apple products, and then they'll say, "Well, what else can I do?" You know?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, Apple systems are very capable. We've seen a lot with benchmarks from their M1 and M2 chips that they're very capable to play a lot of these games and a lot of different applications. And so this is potentially really exciting. And I'm hopeful that it'll be good to have another platform from games to play on. Um, However, I'm still a little skeptical. And we'll see. And maybe that's just the spitefulness that I have. That I, if I were a developer, I wouldn't do it just for spite.
Hey, you might be right. You might be spot on. That the market always responds interestingly, and I don't feel like anyone never really knows what's going to happen, but
I know. You just need to build a time machine and
that's
then
right.
go back in time and place a bet on it.
There you go. I like that idea.
All right. Apple also announced some updates to iOS 17. It's one of the first years that they finally had some major updates to it. And although Apple didn't specifically call out some AI powered features, there are going to be some AI powered features within iOS 17. Just to name a few, there's going to be some improvements within messaging and the keyboard, where it will allow you to have better auto correcting based on your typing habits and your messaging habits. So I guess now for those that choose to use odd words or profane words, you have that option now and it'll stop auto correcting. Uh, um, as well, there's going to be a new journaling app, which I think is pretty cool because it'll allow you to, where the phone will kind of curate everything for a specific day and outlay it in such a way that it's um, pleasant to look at and it'll allow you to um, add some narrative to what it curated. And I think it'll be really cool if there, are some future updates with this where it will auto curate some of the, I guess, some of your own narrative that you would have put, as you continue to add into the journaling app. That will be kind of cool. So there are a lot of interesting features here in iOS 17. Um, and I wanted to get your opinion. How do you think these advancements within iOS 17 are going to shape the relationship that we have as a society with technology?
Mm. Yeah, I think so. So I think not just with iOS 17. I mean, for one thing, I think it's really cool that we have these these smart features. I'll call them. I really like that the journaling app. I'm excited for that. It's supposed to give like prompt you questions to help with thought provocation on your journaling. Um, and to answer your question, I think it will make society less self-reliant, and it will cause society to be more reliant on technology and more dependent on the technology. And it might make society slower physically and intelligently. It might make society lazy. Um, I think there's this trade-off here, right?
Mhm.
You trade efficiency and speed for personal strength and like a healthy mm, like level of confidence, I guess. Because I think of it this way. If I'm not having to think about what prompts I'm going to do for journaling, and if I'm not having to think so much, I'm not being pressured and I'm not being challenged. And when you're not pressured or challenged to grow and progress, then you either stay stagnant or you actually even lose, right? You
Yeah.
lose strength, you lose mental concentration, you lose capacity to think, you lose creativity. And so that's kind of where you have this trade-off. We're trading we're trading these things that as a normal human without technology is learning and growing and being challenged every day by puzzles and problems and things they have to figure out and overcome, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, whatever it might be. But AI and these smart features with technology is allowing us to avoid those annoying problems and just have them solved easily. And I think that there's a negative impact there. Um, I'll flip it back to you, but then I also have another follow up question for you after you answer.
Okay.
So,
I
what do you
agree.
think about
I
that?
agree with you. I think like I, I love the idea of, these features, this technology making our lives easier.
Yep.
However, with that comes a trade-off is that it removes frustration out of our lives. And when there's a lack of frustration, it it prevents us from being able to grow at an exponential rate. And
Yep.
so your learning and growing is diminished in such a way. And
Mhm.
it also removes the ability for abstract thought. And I think that is like a very important thing in our society. And so while I like this, it it has me a little hesitant as well and a little worried. And um, I do agree. I think we're going to become too dependent on it, and it's it's going to really hinder. It may even hinder how we develop new technology in the future. Also,
Yeah. True. True. Or it might that might happen, or it might even just influence where the progression of technology goes to further enable this reliance
oh yeah,
on efficiency and speed.
hmm
I think of the movie Wally and the people
yep.
just like sitting in
I
the
was thinking
cafeteria,
that too.
and they're just like the captain of the ship in Wally. He gets a book, and it's like a normal page book. He opens it, and the book is the manual for the ship. You know this scene,
Uh-huh.
but he goes, Manuel, read chapter one or whatever. He's just expecting it
Uh-huh.
to explain things for him, like
Right.
like a Siri or these other smart devices. And I think that's where we're going.
Yep.
We're getting to the point. My kids, whenever they have a question or whenever they need anything, they just ask their Amazon device. I'm not gonna say the name,
Yep.
but which is cool. It's cool because they get answers, but at the same time, they don't know what it's like to like try and strive and work for the answer.
Right.
So
Yeah.
pros and cons.
Pros and cons for sure.
I did have a question for you about this.
Yeah.
Do you think with with these personalized smart features and the integration into mobile devices, and we're seeing VR and AR and these wearable devices, do you think that personal privacy is going to be um, a large issue in this, or do you think that there's a pretty tight fence around privacy and we don't have to worry too much about it?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think that the lines of personal privacy are becoming blurred so much that we may not even notice it. I think that
Mm, that's a good
this
answer.
type this type of technology really does get into your personal life, your personal habits. It learns a lot about you, and once it's out there, there's not much you can do to protect it. I mean, Apple purportedly, whether this is true or not, this says that they really value privacy, and they do what they can to protect personal privacy. However, even still, with all their protections, with all their marketing, and with their ridiculous terms and conditions for all of their devices,
Yeah.
it still can't protect everything.
Yeah.
And essentially, when you use technology, you do give up personal privacy for that convenience. And I think
Right.
as this technology develops and we continue to use it, we're giving up a little bit more personal privacy, um, just to have that convenience. What
Yeah.
are
So
your
that
thoughts?
I like your answer a lot, actually, that the lines of personal privacy are becoming blurred because it's difficult to say yes or no, right? And I think people have people have their things that they want to keep close to their chest and they don't want to share, but other people are fine, and they don't consider certain pieces of information as necessarily private. And you're right, there's a trade-off there. If you want to have these benefits, you're going to have to share and give up some information because it's almost impossible to help someone if you don't know anything about them,
Right.
right? Just from the nature of the technology. Um, but that again, that could be scary if there's any kind of malice towards the consumer. There can be some truly deadly consequences, right?
Right.
Um, and so that is a danger. Who knows what will happen? But I think you're right. It's getting more and more blurred, and I think people just aren't noticing it. They're like, "Ooh, I want the newest features, or I want this, or I want that," and then now it's like, okay, we have all your information because you agreed to it, you know.
Yeah.
So
Um, I really like your answer. It made me think of like, if you kind of compare this with like your relationship with another individual. Like, the more you get to know them and the more personal information that you share with that other person, I mean, essentially, you're giving up that security of holding that information with them to develop that relationship.
yeah,
Uh, and, it depending on the level of trust that you have in that other person, they can either, you know, guard that information as much as you guard it, or they can be malicious with it and share it. And
yeah.
so now that we have AI as part as that other quasi relationship that we have, that we're sharing personal information with, what is AI going to do with that
Are they on the
information?
side of humans?
Yes. So are they going to closely guard that, or will AI be as malicious as movies have shown in the past?
Oh man, we're living in the wild days, Ethan.
I know.
Wild days. Crazy to think about that stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's for the benefit of humanity.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really think that's like, I guess, as a pro tip for everyone else. I mean, you really need to think about um, what you're willing to give up in order for convenience in your life. And, if you want more privacy, you have to be willing to give up that convenience.
Yep. I Speaking of which, maybe this isn't like as directly related, but one thing I've started doing is when I go to websites and it says like cookies, accept or more options
Uh-huh.
or reject. If it's reject, I always click reject.
Yep, me too.
If it's more options, I'll even go to more options. I'll look at it, I'll turn all of them off, and I'll click save or whatever it is. Every once in a while, you'll get a stupid website that's like, you have to log in and sign up in
Yeah.
order to change your cookies. And that is so annoying. But for the most part, I've been going through whenever I go to a new website, I I usually do not accept the cookies. I
Yeah.
usually will reject it. I just started doing that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really interesting because like, I can tell like sometimes where I've allowed all of them, um, I see ads all the time about just like one thing that I was
Yeah.
looking at. I'm like, that's super annoying.
Yep.
Um, and and now it almost seems like sometimes websites make it a chore for you to reject everything.
Yeah.
And and I find that really frustrating.
Same.
Like I should have a choice whether I want to accept or reject. But
Yeah.
they
Make it
make
easy.
yeah, but they make rejecting so difficult. Super annoying.
Yep. They want the data.
Yes, they do. Big money in that. Well, looking at other data, looks like the Allen Institute is teaming up with Amazon to build the first ever map of the human brain. Ben, what do we have going on in here?
Yeah. This is pretty cool. I thought this was really interesting. You look at this and you also look at Elon's Neuralink and the technology that's going on with understanding the brain and reading the brain and be able to understand wavelengths and make actions based on that. This is another step in the direction of just essentially using technology to create telepathy. And so what's happening is AWS, Amazon Web Services, is teaming up with the Allen Institute for Brain Science, and they're creating the first comprehensive map of the human brain. Think of the periodic chart of the human brain. That's kind of what they say in the article. They aim to advance our understanding of brain function, and it could have like significant implications for neuroscience research, medical applications, other things like that. The idea is to show the relationships, the triggers, how things move, everything about the brain, and create a map for it so that when we're developing technologies and or medical applications, it's just a lot easier to see the flow of and the understanding of the brain. Okay. Pretty wild stuff, to be honest, because the brain is not simple. It's very, very, very complex.
Very.
Um, Above my pay grade, right? I am accounting and consulting. And so I am beyond way beyond this is way beyond the scope of my education and knowledge. But with that being said, question for you, Ethan, with the development of a comprehensive brain map, what ethical and societal considerations do you think are arising from this?
Ooh,
Um, how do you think it'll impact positive and negative aspects of how we live?
that is a great question. The ethical thing, I think, for this would be to make it generalized enough that you couldn't know the individual of whose brain you were mapping.
Mm,
However, with doing so, you can't get at like the specific aspects of the brain
yeah,
that you need to do to really understand what's going on. Because I mean, with a brain, from my very limited understanding of it, like um, what one thing that happens to an individual can have a chain reaction throughout the brain. It can spark memories, create new memories, create reactions to the body, and so each of those things are very specific to an individual.
yeah,
And to understand that, you really have to know the individual. And, and if what they're doing or what they're purporting to do happens and they map out a brain, essentially we would be able to know exactly who that is, what makes them tick, everything. We would be able to. And my thought, my theory with this is that you'd be able to know exactly who that individual is and everything about them, just because their whole brain has been mapped out.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that gets at to some serious ethical implications because, you know, I mean, that's bringing somebody's personal life, their entire life, stuff
Right.
that they may not even know about, to the public, and that could potentially affect not only them but their family, people that they care about, and um, essentially, it's a data breach of their entire life, right there.
Yeah, that's it. That's really good terminology used. A data breach of their life.
What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you bring up really good points. I think that's a valid point. We were just talking about privacy with technology. The brain stores all of your information, and yeah, if you are able to tap into that, then you're able to access anything from that individual's brain, right?
Hmm.
And that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. Um, there's like, let's say you're needing a medical procedure, right? Let's say need you need memories or something like that. So you go to the doctors, you go to the hospital, they do like a scan to map your brain. Um, if someone else, right, gets their hands on that data or any information, or how to access that, that could be um, that can be really dangerous. And a lot of personal information is gone. Like, this is worse than getting a social security number.
Yeah.
um so I think you're right that it's like it is a data breach. You could really have some serious implications here. How do you create regulation for that? How do you create ethics for that? How do you protect that data and information? It's going to be very difficult to do that. And then you layer on top technologies where you have implants that can access and influence your brain,
Yeah.
right? Like Neuralink. And then if
Hmm.
you're able to do that remotely, and then you can identify someone's brain that's been mapped, identify what chip number or some kind of ID of the chip that's attached to their brain, then you can influence it. That is scary.
Yeah. Because then, there could be someone with malicious intent, um, modifying your behavior, your actions without you even knowing.
Yeah. Yeah, they could send signals in your brain to trigger chemical reactions like an adrenaline rush or anger or fear or something,
Hmm.
just totally mess with someone. Um, but not only that, like, I think of the movie Inception for a little bit, where people can hijack dreams,
Yeah.
and instead of dreams, it's memories. Um, have you seen the technology that was just invented recently? They had a mouse go through a maze, and they had a camera on the mouse, and then they tracked the brainwaves of the mouse and recreated the images from the brainwaves, and they matched the camera but from the eyes of the mouse.
Really?
Dude, it's
Wow.
insane. It's insane. And so we're getting to a point where you can ask someone, hey, like, what's your pin number? And
Uh,
people aren't gonna not think about their pin number, right? It's like, don't think of an elephant, and you think of an elephant,
Nothing.
right?
Yeah.
And so if you're able to monitor someone's brain activity and have this mapping, and you say, what's your pin number? They're gonna immediately see the numbers in their head of the pin number.
Yeah.
Anyway, data breach, like you said, I think
Yeah.
there's dangers for data breach. I want to know how much upside and positive impact this could have? Because I'm ignorant in that aspect.
I mean, to me, I think this has a lot of upside. Um, just thinking like in the medical field, the amount of knowledge that you would have for somebody that may have cancer. You could know if you had a map of the brain, you could know exactly how to handle that in such a way that it could preserve every aspect of their brain
Mm,
without any harm. Um, with this, you could essentially know how to better interact with humans because you know how the brain interprets certain information. So, from like
yeah.
a social perspective, it could really help with relationships. It could help people who are struggling in their marriages, um, help them understand, you know, this is what needs to change and how you can change it. Um, and make your marriage work just because you have a map of the brain and understand how certain things affect um certain aspects.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. We've been watching this show called Couples Therapy, which,
Yeah, I watched the first episode of it too.
oh, okay, yeah. So and I just based off your point, I'm thinking of like instead of having to like dig and dig and dig in someone's history to try and identify what they're feeling, you could say, okay, you're having troubles in your marriage. Let's just do a quick brain scan, and as we're doing the brain scan, let's just kind of go through like how you feel and what your thoughts are. And it would be cool if the technology could pick up on what they're feeling or what their perspective is or what you know you could understand the behavior better because you have this insight from the brain waves and you have a mapping of that brain. So it's like, oh,
Mm.
this is trauma. Okay, this is trauma and it's a fear trauma or it's an anger trauma or something. And then
Right.
that would direct you immediately to what the source of the problem is, right?
Yeah.
That'd
And
be pretty cool.
so yeah, I mean, I think it has the potential to be really helpful. Um, but yeah, as you said, how do you regulate this? How do you protect the individual? Um, and I think those are things that um, we need to grapple with um, before we can move forward with stuff like this, before we can take these innovations. Those
Yeah.
types of considerations need to be made and handled. And I guess it really depends on the risk tolerance that we have as a society.
Yeah. I think you're right. And everyone has their own different risk tolerance. So
Yeah. And
that'll be tough to decide on
so yeah, how do you blanket a risk tolerance for society when everybody has their
levels.
own viewpoints? Yeah.
Yeah. We'll find out. That's what
Yeah,
smart people are for.
exactly. One day we'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of getting there, Amazon is now finally adding ads to Prime Video and their streaming service. What do we have going on here, Ben?
Yeah. So I was really frustrated reading this article. Um, Even though I don't really watch Amazon Prime as much as I do other streaming networks, but it's frustrating. But
Nothing gives
Amazon's
more
playing,
frustration than ads.
yeah, exactly. It's so stupid. Anyway, I'll get it. I'll explain the article. Amazon is planning to introduce advertising supported tiers for its Prime Video streaming service. Okay. The new option would allow users to access content for free at a discounted price in exchange for viewing ads, similar to ad-supported models offered by other streaming platforms. Netflix is thinking about doing this, or they might even be doing it. I can't remember if they've implemented it, but then you have like YouTube and Hulu. They do this as well. Um, it's just kind of annoying because, in my personal opinion, I think they're going to somehow bump the price for a no ad streaming service, and then they'll make the discounted price what we're currently paying, and or
Yeah.
close to it, and have ads. It's like I have to shell out more money. It's so
Yeah.
dumb.
I'm pretty sure that the ad tier would be included with your Prime membership. And then if you want no ads, you pay more.
It's a premium. Yep.
Yep.
I bet you are correct there. Um, what what do you think this is gonna do from a user experience? Do you think people are gonna pay the money, or do you think they're just not gonna care? Do you think people are gonna boycott?
Oh,
Is there any kind of positive upswing for the user on this?
I don't think there's any positive upswing for users on this. This to me, this is all um to a positive for Amazon
A money
a-
grab.
and their bottom line and trying to keep this service alive that's probably draining them money.
Yeah.
And so I think to me, and maybe this is just my opinion that I'm applying to everybody. People are tired of streaming services and how much money you have to pay for them, that the prices keep going up, the ads are now showing up, and that if you want to get rid of those, you have to keep paying more. And if you don't pay and you just go with the ad, then more ads keep coming. I mean, I see that with YouTube. Like it's like every 5 minutes you have an ad, and sometimes you get two ads that you can't skip, and and you're forced to watch those two ads. I mean, because of that, that forced me to buy premium because I was so tired of ads.
So
So
annoying.
they got me on that, and I think that I think everyone's just going to get frustrated with this to such a point that they're probably going to stop watching Prime Video, and it's by doing this, it's not going to solve the problem that Amazon has. They're not going to make any more money with doing this. If not, they may lose more money because their users are not streaming as much on Prime Video.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
I agree. I think this is kind of a money grab. And in my opinion, if they don't put out more quality content, the ad free or the ad streaming service won't really matter because people are just going to be like, I'm not watching your streaming services. There's nothing good for me there. And so, in my opinion, and this goes for all streaming services, in order for them to survive and continue, they're going to need to continue pumping out good quality content. Um, because it's so segmented now between the different
Mhm.
shows that people aren't willing to pay for 5 to 10 streaming services. Like, especially now that most of them are getting close to $20 a month, if not
Yeah,
more.
which is
And
ridiculous.
so that's just it's kind of ridiculous. So I wouldn't be surprised if number one, there's more piracy. And
Yep.
number two, people just rotate streaming services. Like, okay, this month we're gonna do Apple TV and we're gonna catch up on all the Ted Lasso episodes. Okay,
Mhm.
next month we'll do HBO and we'll watch Game of Thrones. And then the next month we'll watch Netflix and watch Stranger Things. And the next month, because every streaming service has maybe like half a dozen quality shows.
Mhm.
And for the average person, they're watching shows every week, and they can get through them.
Yeah.
So like I just think that's what's going to happen. And because we started to see with Netflix with the password sharing, there's repercussions there. I bet we'll see that with Amazon as well.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be good for streaming industry. If anything, it's just going to make things worse. Um, and that's just going to have such a downstream effect on users and everyone else.
Yeah. It's really annoying.
Well, some good news for Ford. Looks like they are going to be ramping up production of the F-150 Lightning. So if
Yep.
anybody is in the in the market for an F-150 Lightning, if you order today, it could be yours as soon as September. So it looks like they are going to be scaling production on the F-150 and reducing customer wait times. Um, the XLT trim has been limiting in reservation wait times, and now they are going to be ramping up production, especially for this trim, and which will create a greater demand for the F-150 Lightning, which has already had a pretty big demand, but it has seemed that Ford has not been able to keep up with this demand, especially because I haven't really seen a lot of these trucks driving on the road as much as I would have thought based on how popular it was when they announced it.
Yep.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on how how do you think Ford is going to handle ramping up production for this? Do you think they're going to be successful, or do you think that they're going to have some similar challenges that other EV makers have had in the past or are currently facing with?
Yeah, good question. So, hmm, as long as they're getting their supplies, I think they'll be fine. I don't think it's a matter of industrial resources. I think it's a matter of supplies that they need, like raw materials that they need. That's my personal opinion because I think they have the infrastructure in place to make them, and they're probably reducing all their other, low low turnover gasoline vehicles for the F-150. Um, like I said, it's just a matter of raw materials, but the raw materials for batteries is in such high demand.
Mhm.
How do you get priority there to have your raw materials delivered in order to make these EVs over the other EV brands? Um, your sourcing and your operations, your supply chain, it's really got to be tip top shape. And so if they're focusing enough on that, I think they'll be fine. If they if they are thinking it's like any other vehicle they make, then they're going to be screwed. Um, yeah, I personally like to believe that they can live up to this, but if I'm being honest with myself, I do not think they're going to live up to what they say here. Um, I think that's always been the case with EVs. They
Yeah,
are over promised and under delivered.
I agree. I don't think I think Ford is really good at operations, and they are certainly capable of scaling production because they've had a long history and know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
However, to your point, I think the raw material side and getting supplies to be able to produce the vehicles is going to be what will be the problem here. Um, I agree. Especially like with batteries, those have been extremely hard to produce, and with EVs, that's pretty much the main reason or the main component of the vehicle. Without that, you don't have a vehicle. So, being able to get those sourced appropriately to be able to meet this will be the key for them being able to meet their target here. I'm a little skeptical on their outlook. Um, I do think they are going to increase production, but their goal that they have may not be met, and they still may not be able to keep up with demand.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think COVID just totally messed up supply chain for everyone in every
Mhm.
industry. Um, Someone really close to me ordered an F-150 Raptor like 2 years
Mhm.
ago. Still has not gotten it.
Really?
It's yeah, ridiculous.
Wow.
And that's not even an EV,
Yeah,
right?
that's just
And maybe that's the reason why, because they're like, oh, EVs are pushed higher on the priority list. But still, 2 years and still hasn't gotten anything. So
wow. That's that's bananas.
pretty wild. I mean, and that's like you would think for a higher end vehicle. I mean, that's like 100K truck
Yeah.
plus.
Yeah.
For a higher end vehicle, you think they prioritize those, but I don't know. It's pretty wild. Yeah. So I'm not holding my breath. I'm sure I'm sure like you said, they're gonna ramp up production, but I don't think they'll hit their goal.
Yeah. I mean, no, a lot of EV makers right now um, seem to be struggling on still meeting that demand for their vehicles. I know, like Tesla, for instance, they're pretty much sold out for this year and even some into next year too, just with how many orders they have and trying to keep up with production. So, um,
Yeah.
and there's been a lot of stuff going on with Rivian. Um, Definitely their shareholders are not happy, among other
Dude, that's
things.
crazy.
But yeah, I right now, um, EV space, and like even into other applications for like e-bikes, those productions still frustrated. And I think it all comes down to that battery.
Yeah, 100%. Really quickly,
Yeah,
speaking of Tesla, did you see that California is allowing the I don't know if it's a incentive kickback tax break. They're allowing something on EV vehicles again, and essentially, if you're living in California, you can get a Model 3 for like 25K
really.
net. Dude, yeah. And so it bumped up Tesla's stock
Wow.
because I think it was just this week that they announced it. And with Tesla's price cuts, you could get a Model 3 for a very
Very,
affordable price, which was insane to me. I'm like, a
yeah,
Model 3 for under 30K.
that's
Um,
like a screaming deal. That's like almost worth
yeah.
buying another one.
I
Just
know. Like for me, I'm like, I have a truck that's worth like 25K right now. Why am I not getting this EV? My truck is trash, in my opinion. Like I can't stand my truck, and it's too small for me. I'm having a kid tomorrow. Like I need my Model 3, baby. Come
I
on.
know.
So I don't know. It got my wheels turning in my head.
Uh,
Um, the other thing that I wanted to say was Volvo came out with an EV that it's the EV, maybe it's the EX30 EV30. It's Volvo's. Um, it just came out. I
EX30.
just saw a review on it. It looks so clean as like a small
Oh, that
crossover
does.
SUV.
That does look like
Um,
a really nice, sleek crossover.
yeah, and they have like an off-road package for it that they make it look really cool. Cross country the Volvo EX30 cross country. Volvo EX30 cross country.
Inside looks really nice. The interior looks nice. They actually put in a decent sized screen and looks like the tech in there um looks pretty good.
Yeah, so here, let's see. I'll share my screen. So yeah, like I'm just going through these, I just typed in Volvo EX30 and we got the screen here. Big screen. Pretty cool off-roading imagery. It
Yeah.
looks like it looks like it could handle.
Uh-huh.
It looks like it could handle. It kind of reminds me of like the larger Subarus, right?
Yeah.
Um I thought this was a really cool vehicle. If I had, if I was younger and I didn't have as many kids, I would seriously consider this guy. Um, and I used to hate on Volvos a lot, but they've really grown on me. I think they've turned a lot into a much classier vehicle than I previously thought. I used to think
I would
Volvos
agree
were
with that.
yeah, like I used to think that Volvos were like for, really slow old drivers and that
Hmm.
like had no taste. But now you look at the Volvo SUVs and like they're pretty luxury. They're very
Yeah.
nice and they're designed well. You know, this is a pretty clean interior steering wheel.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it looks good. I don't know. It popped up on my radar. I was like, oh wow, this might be something to look into.
Yeah, that might be worth looking into.
Oh, the reason why I bring it up is because it starts in the mid 30s. It's one of the cheaper
Ooh,
SUVs that's uh EVs. It's got high range and it's not over 300, but it's like
it's close
280.
up there. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean you
like
can still do
270,
a lot with
280, I
that.
think. It's got fast acceleration, 0 to 60 in like 3.4 for one of the packages for the dual motor. Um, so it's got good specs, you know. It's
Mhm.
not a bad vehicle. It's actually a really good top contender EV, and especially at that price point. So
I
that's
like
I
it.
brought it up. I wasn't sure if you saw that, and I'm like, man,
No, yeah, I hadn't seen that yet.
the EV game is becoming better and better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, 2 weeks ago we talked about Ford switching over their charging port to
Yeah,
the new North American standard, I guess, as they're calling it. So, I mean, there's been a lot of good advancements in the EV space. So, hopefully, we will continue to see more and will give us a lot of good options um, as we get more into the life cycle of EVs. And hopefully, the grid will keep up, which I'm I'm doubtful on that.
yeah, that's the kicker.
So, but what isn't the kicker is we want to thank everyone for sticking with us and supporting our channel. Make sure you hit that thumbs up if you liked it. And if you didn't, well, that other button seems to do okay. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't do anything anyway. So send it to somebody you dislike if you disliked it. As always, ringling that dingling button so you always are up to date on new content as it's posted on the channel. Until then, we'll catch you in the next one. Have a wonderful evening and stay classy.
Peace.